again, and welcome to episode 9 of Tell Your Story. My name is Todd Nesloni. I'm an elementary school principal in Navasota, Texas, and also author of the book Stories from Web, that this entire web series is based after. The whole premise behind the show is that I seek to find people who I have heard them share pieces of their story, and I have found them moving and powerful, and wanted to introduce them to people that I follow online and people who are following me. So this week's guest is a friend of mine named Jofee Tremain. And Jofee, thanks for being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
So Jofee and I have followed each other and kind of known each other for, gosh, maybe is it a couple of years now, or?
It's been a few years. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. And so and she's always been such a great, bubbly, friendly person, and it's just been so great getting to kind of get to know her even more recently. But Jofee, kind of introduce yourself. Tell everybody here kind of what you do and who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Jofee Tremain, and I'm currently a middle school assistant principal, but I'm an educator, and started off as an attendance clerk in a high school, and I've gone full circle from being a secondary teacher, coach, elementary principal, assistant elementary principal, and now middle school principal. So I believe I've gone the full circle. So there's really nothing left.
you got a lot of different jobs in the educational world.
Yeah. I've enjoyed all of them. It's been a lot of fun.
Did you know you always wanted to be a teacher?
No. I wanted to be a cosmetologist or a backup singer for a gospel choir. That's really what I wanted to do. And
those are two very different things.
I know. Or be a person who does hair and sing at the same time. That's really what I wanted to do. But at the school where I was an attendance clerk, my principal encouraged me to do it, and I really didn't want to. And then one day in a meeting, I had an IEP meeting for my son, my oldest. I didn't understand anything that they were saying. And when I left the meeting, it was all agreed upon that he's going to, be on medication. And I had no idea how it went from he's receiving support to him being on medication. And that just threw me. And so from that point on, after talking with my principal and him encouraging me, I became a teacher so I could actually, as a parent, advocate better. And so I went into education because somebody asked me to, but I've stayed in it because I'm really passionate about kids and working with kids.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah. So, Jofee, I got to see you recently at the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals, mouthful, conference, and it was so great getting to catch up. And when we were sitting there talking, we were talking about the book and telling your story and everybody having something important for them to share in their own life. And you shared a really powerful, very personal story with me and my and one of my co-authors who was there, Travis, as well. Can you kind of tell our audience kind of the story you shared with me?
Yes. What I shared with Todd is that in our family, we were kind of like on the tail end of, I guess you call it mental illness in our family, but my son is a cutter. And so sometimes I refer to him as a person who still cuts, and sometimes I refer to him as a recovering person from cutting. But I'm a parent of a child who cuts. And so that's what I shared with Todd. And I'm not really sure how we got into it, but I just started pouring my heart out to him. And I just shared that we discovered this at the end of his 6th grade year, starting into his 7th grade year. So my first year in Texas, trying to learn Texas and learn the district and just life in general, and just moving and all this other stuff. I'm also discovering that our son had a problem, and I wore a mask at school, covering up pain, hurt, embarrassment, you can name it. And so I covered it all up at work and never told anyone. My office manager kind of figured out what was going on. So, I shared it with her. And then at nighttime, I'm working hard to keep him alive. And that really was my life from 7th grade on until maybe about his freshman year of high school. So we're recently at the tail end of everything. So we still keep watch, but so that's pretty much what I think what I shared with you, and some other stuff with that as well.
Yeah. So, Jofee, thinking as a parent, and I know on this episode here we're going to have parents who are watching as well. What do you feel like were maybe some of the signs that you missed, I guess would be the best way to say it, or what was it that finally made you go, I think there's a problem here?
So there was a couple of things. The first time was I received a phone call. At his school, they were doing some sort of conversation or something regarding cutting and things like that. And in his class, the teacher had a project or an experiment, and the kids could move their bracelet from one end to the other. And so she could visually see that he was a student who had an issue. Mm-hmm. So that was reported to the principal. The principal contacted me. He contacted me on the day I had a staff meeting. And so I'm moving from hearing this conversation, and then I go into my staff meeting. Staff meeting didn't go very well. I stood there, and the staff had no idea. And so it just didn't go well. And so when I left the staff meeting, I ran back to my office, and I literally was mixed with all these different emotions. I just found this out, and I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know what cutting was. I'd never heard that term before, and I didn't really process it. I didn't believe it. So that was one time. So that was one puzzle piece. The second puzzle piece happened the day I was scheduled to go take my principal's exam for Texas. Mm-hmm. I went into Anthony's room, and I shook him. And when he rolled over, he had a blade underneath him. He was also sleeping in his jacket, which was kind of weird because he's a very hot-natured kid.
Right.
But I didn't think too much about it. So in that moment, I had two choices: go take my test that I needed to pass, or try to figure out what's going on with this blade. So I snatched the blade from underneath him, thinking that he didn't see me. I went to the bathroom, and I hid it in the bathroom. And when I looked up in the mirror, he was right there. I never heard him come up behind me. So that was another red flag. I left to go take the test. And I'll tell you, it's only God because that's the only reason why I passed that test. I don't remember the questions on the test. I don't remember how long the test was. I just knew during the test, I was thinking about what I saw. And when I got home, I asked him questions. Another red flag. He wasn't truthful. When your kids are lying, but you don't want to accept it. So I had a couple of things going on there, trying to figure it all out. And then the next puzzle piece that happened was it was Christmas Eve. So in our house for Christmas Eve, everybody else is celebrating holidays and things like that. I'm sorry, New Year's Eve. So for us, instead of celebrating ringing in a new year, we were in the hospital. Oh, and so what happened with that is I'm not sure how the conversation happened. There was something about him on that day that made me just take his arms, and I needed to see it. And I grabbed his sleeve and I pulled it up, and I could see writings on his arm. And that's how I knew. And I took off running down the hall, and I fell to the floor, and I just started crying out to God. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. So my husband and I, we rushed him to the nearest emergency room. And I remember sitting in the emergency room, and I called my mom. She's the first person I thought of. And my mom, prayed me through it. We talked through it. My husband stayed in the room with our son. And we had no idea how extensive it was. It was so extensive that he had run out of places on him, which is why he literally was covered up all the time. So those were some of the signs. When you notice that your child, if he always wears shorts and he's wearing pants, mm-hmm. and it's 100 degrees outside, he's always wearing tank tops because he was trying to show everything off, and now he's not showing things off. He changed his hair, which was not a big deal. I change my hair all the time. Mm-hmm. But this was a kid who went from, loving who he was with his hair to completely trying to change it all up. And it was just some of the weirdest things. He was mean, very confrontational. We found things in his room where he had kind of cut some words out that we don't use in our house. It's just those kind of things that we noticed. He kept some of the same routines, but we just noticed he just was not the same kid.
Right.
So those were the signs that we noticed.
So, as a parent and knowing there may be people watching who are struggling with something similar, how do you go through this and really fully focus on him and finding him the support that he needs and not blaming you in the midst
Right.
of everything? Because I know, like, anytime, I mean, I'm not a parent yet, but
Mhm.
working with children at school, when they make a mistake or do something, and I'm like, I should have been there, I blame myself. And so I
Mhm.
know it's natural as a parent to want to blame yourself in these situations too. How do you not do that?
Well, we did. We blamed ourselves for quite a while, and it also impacted our marriage as well. Because when you're fighting with each other, then that was a great distractor for him to keep doing what he was doing.
Right.
Because now we're distracted. But it took a moment for me at work. My office manager, she just came in there and she said, "You need to let it out." And I'm very reserved. She goes, "You've got to let it out." And I remember closing the door, and something happened, and I just started crying, and I couldn't stop crying. And in that moment, it was like that verse, "Be still and know that I am God." That's what I just kept hearing. And I thought, okay, I got this, because I was trying to control it myself and trying to fix him, and I couldn't do it because I'm a great fixer. I'm a problem solver. I couldn't fix him. That was the moment that I released him and gave him to the person who can fix him. And so what ended up happening when we stopped blaming ourselves, our son had to find another avenue, because it was easy. When we blamed ourselves, he washed his hands of any responsibility. But once we did that and created those boundaries, we were able to figure out the resources. So it ended up, because of how severe he was hospitalized. He was removed from school. We did all this very quietly, and kudos to his school. The principal was amazing. They kept everything quiet. Even my boss, because I was going to resign, but my boss hung in there with me and was like, "You take care of your kid. That's what we do here." And it was amazing. And so when I had all those resources supporting me at work, I was able to be mom and be wife. And we got him the counseling that he needed. We had family counseling as well. Like I said, he was hospitalized for a little bit. That was hard. That was extremely hard. Like I said, when you leave your child somewhere and you're not allowed to see him for long periods of time, and you can talk to him, and he doesn't want to talk to you, or when you go to see him and he doesn't want to see you, or calling you names and screaming at you, and "I hate you," and this and that. You just have to keep telling yourself that's not your kid, and that's something else that has a stronghold on him. And you have to pray him through and believe that the person who's greater than you can fix him. And you just have to be ready to receive him when he comes back. Sort of like that prodigal son, be ready to receive him when he comes back, and just set your boundaries of what it's going to look like until he's healed and he comes back to you. And that's what we had to do.
And I want to make
process. It's a long process.
And I want to make something really clear to our viewers and listeners as well. We got your son's permission to tell this story. So in case anybody's listening or watching and wants to know, Jofee did go and talk to her son to get his permission to share all of this as well. But I want to talk about too. You're dealing with all of this as a mother while also being in charge of all these other kids and these teachers and these families. And you talked about at one point thinking, I'm going to have to resign because I need to go. How did you figure out a way to balance it all without completely falling apart?
I fell apart at home. So I knew how much strength I had, and I knew how long I could hold it together at school. But as soon as school was over, I knew what time everybody left, and I strategically would get in my car, and I knew how long I had between my car and home to cry. And then I knew how long I had sitting in the driveway to cry before I walked into the house.
Wow.
So it sounds weird, but I just kind of knew that. And so it was a hard balance. And there were a couple of friends within the district that I leaned on. And there were two, and I actually texted them tonight and said, I'm going to be talking about this story. They were two people that They always watched me at a meeting, and they knew when my spirit was low, and they would either come over and sit with me or send me something and lift me up. So between having that at work and having, my husband and I here at home, our parents, when you have praying grandparents, I'm telling you, that's the most powerful thing. So when you've got my parents and his parents, we had enough people that surrounded us that when we could not pray, they could do it for us. And so that was the biggest thing, but it was hard to balance. There was things I had to give up, things that I knew I couldn't do. The hardest thing again is wearing that mask, and people are asking you, because I'm one of those people, you ask me how I'm doing, I'm going to tell you. Mm-hmm. So I had to really, when people were asking me, how are you doing? Fine. And just walk away, because I know I tell my story and I tell people how I'm doing. And I didn't feel comfortable enough sharing this story with people I just met. And we're new to the area. I didn't know what was going on. I'm still trying to figure things out. And it was tough. I mean, I got my work done. I don't think I missed any deadlines or anything like that, but it was very, very difficult. So, when everybody else is celebrating and doing things, we literally were here, trying our best to make sure that he understood that he was worthy. And one of the things that I did ask him recently, I asked him what made him stop. And he said he found purpose. Wow. So he said that's the biggest thing. And so for whoever is listening, it doesn't matter. I mean, because I'm a problem solver. So it doesn't matter how I can solve everybody else's problems and the kids and things like that. What he said to me, he goes, I had to find the purpose. So it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter what his father did. He had to find the purpose. Right. And once he found the purpose, then he was able to see that's not worth it. And a lot of people, and I actually just talked to him before we got on this. I said, what's really cool about your story is that it ends in a positive way, and a lot of people just don't have that. And we're very thankful for that, which is why we can't sit on his story. We want to make sure that when we do share it, just like he's always given me permission. He said, if you share it, it's got to be for the purpose of helping others, and paying it forward. Nothing more than that.
Well, and I think sometimes when we're going through really difficult things, we've been through something really difficult, our immediate reaction is embarrassment or I've got to carry this. I'm not going to tell anybody. But then what you find is when you talk about those experiences and share them in a way that is genuine, that is just you pouring your heart out, you see more and more that this person was dealing with it in this way. This person needed to hear you say this at that moment. And that's why I've loved kind of doing this Tell Your Story series. And the whole point of Stories from Web is that, every single person is going through something in life. And some of us are in mountaintop highs and some of us are down in the valleys. And sometimes you have no idea, just like you said. No idea. You were holding it together because you wanted to do this and this and this, and you were going to get it done and then go and have your moments when you had those scheduled in, when you knew you could get away with it without having to answer a lot of questions. And, and that's so important for us to realize, not even just as educators, but as people, that to don't just believe the facade in front of you. I think Kim Bearden was the one who shared out something earlier this week where she said, just because someone shares a lot of beautiful photos online doesn't mean that their life is beautiful.
Doesn't mean.
Or something to that effect. But, being an educator, do you have a better eye, I guess, for seeing those kind of things in students now?
I feel like I do, because I believe we go through things because you're being prepared for something that's coming. So even though in that moment, that storm that we went through, we didn't realize that storm was going to be something that was going to force our eyes open to see other things, So even with our oldest child, we noticed some things with him. And so to be able to provide support to him a lot sooner and a lot better than what we did with our youngest. Even at school, while all that stuff was going on, I remember having a parent mentioned something to me that she noticed regarding her child. Her child was choking herself. And it was some fad that was going on. I remember that a couple years
ago. I remember that. Mm-hmm.
So her child was doing that. And she had never shared that with anyone other than me. And I shared with her in that moment. I said, I know what it feels like to try to keep your kid alive. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me and she said, you do. She goes, how are you doing it and running the school? And I said, it's only by the grace of God I am. And I said, I have a little bit of strength right now to do XYZ here at school. But when I get home, I have to have this much because I can't go to sleep until he goes to sleep. And he's waiting on me to go to sleep because once I go to sleep, then he can get up to do what he needs to do. So there were times that I was not sleeping because my eye was on making sure that he was doing and where he's supposed to be, you know, because kids like that, they can use anything to and I didn't know that either. So even though I was hiding knives, I was hiding everything sharp. He told me one day, he goes, I can use this. And it was a CD and he broke it in half and he said, I can use this. And that shocked me. It's like, oh my gosh, this is true addiction where it doesn't matter. They can find anything. And so it's just moments like that you're just like, wow. And so when I see situations at school, I do feel like I catch onto it faster. I do have to watch myself and not jump into it too quickly and tell people things too fast because, you know, I don't always have that permission to share that story, but I do see things faster. I have lots of empathy for kids. I have a huge passion for how kids are treated. I have a huge passion for hearing the whole story, and I have a huge passion for making sure parents are part of what kids need to be successful in school. And it's all because of my own experience I've been through.
Well, you know, and you used the word addiction earlier, and I think what's important to remember in this conversation here is, you know, your story is very specific to dealing with the addiction of cutting. But addiction is addiction, whether it is, you know, drugs or cutting or choking or any of those kind of things. And if a parent or another relative knows or sees the signs, where would be your advice to go for them the first way, maybe even to just even bring it up or address it or get help? Like, where do they even begin when they think that this is going on?
So the first thing that I would recommend when you start a journal. So that was one thing. That's one place where we failed. But I didn't think I needed to keep a journal of my kids, you know, comings and goings. But once you notice something, keep a journal and you write down the date and the time and what you saw. And it doesn't have to be a paragraph, just write it down. And don't say anything right away, just write that down. Look for more patterns and look in your journal because what we visually remember and what's in writing are two different things. So that's the number one thing. I would remember that they live in your home and be nosy. So we check, and even now he'll tell you, we go into his room, we check everything in his room now, still, and he's okay with that. And that's the strange part about it. He enjoys the invasion of privacy now, you know, because he understands the purpose of it. And he also loves the fact that what we see is not the negative of what it was before. We see positives. What he does now in our life as a teenager is that teenage stuff that they do that drives you crazy. We love it. Like, we're okay with it. Being late coming home, you're grounded, but we love you. You know, it's not the other stuff. You know, he's dealing with the girlfriend stuff, and those things we love because it's not like it was before. I will also recommend that don't be ashamed to ask for help. Your local church, if there's someone in your church that you know, that you can talk to, do that. I would also tell the school. I did contact his school and I let the school know, here are the things that we're doing at home to keep him safe. And I shared that with the school so they could be aware. Because there were times that he would leave the classroom and go to the bathroom and stay there a long time. I knew what that meant.
Right.
So it's just alerting everybody. So he understood that his boundaries not only were here at home, but they were also at school. And the school was willing to work with me on that. And just the boundaries that you do set are things you have to be consistent. So everybody who's in your home has to follow the same thing. We put them on a schedule. We had a contract that we drew up with him as well. And the contract, it is basically said, if in the beginning, if you're going to cut yourself, we need to know, because that was how the contract started. Right. And so I have text messages and emails from him. I cut myself today. So I knew. Right. Then it became, you are no longer allowed to cut yourself on the contract. And if you do, you cannot stay in their home. Right. And he understood what that meant. And that was a boundary that he needed. And so he was really good about self-reporting. So it turned from me reporting to him self-reporting. And so it's just part of those boundaries and things that you put in place that everybody has to be on board with.
And I think
those are some of the things
to remember is, something you mentioned a little bit earlier, and that's the fact of when you're dealing with an addict and they get to that stage of they're getting help and they're starting to detox in a way, even though it wasn't necessarily a drug, they're going to be really mean and they're going to say really hurtful things that they don't mean. They're just saying it in the moment. And I think that it's important for people to realize that when you're dealing with an addict, that's what they're doing, and it's nothing against you, and to not stop seeking them to get help. Because I knew someone once who they were getting help for their child. And when they saw those things being said and this or that, they were like, nope, I'm going to stop doing the help because I don't want them saying those things about me. And it was like, knowing that I mean, I haven't been through it like you have, so I'm speaking from a different place, but I'm sure as a parent, it was hard to hear your son say those kind of things about you, but you knew that what you were doing was right.
Oh, it was. I'll be honest, there were times I didn't think I would wake up from my sleep. That's how angry I knew he was. And I'm just talking from my perspective. My husband was also here. So there's a different type of level of anger that he had with my husband. And by the way, my husband knows I'm telling this story too. He was on board with it too. But there's a different level of anger that he had with my husband. So, and I'm more the in your face, let's get this done. And my husband's more of a person that just kind of, it sits a little bit and then it comes out. So it was difficult. And I do remember one day here in the bedroom, he was like right here in my face. And I looked at him and I said, when my son comes home, I'll welcome him. You're not my son. So until then, this place where you are living with us, you're just here. And when I walked out of the room, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. But I had to say that because that was during that time when he was very physical, very in your face, following you. It was scary, very scary. But it's just incidents like that, you're getting ready for work and you go to work. Hey, everybody, I'm so glad to see you here today. And then you get in your car and you're just like, oh, I wish that somebody knew, or I wish that somebody would come and stand in for me today because I'm exhausted. I'm trying to keep almost 900 kids alive and safe. And I have one kid at home that I'm struggling to save. It was tough.
And, and as a principal, we put that load on ourselves where we have to be the best for everybody else who's expecting the best from us right now. And I think, and classroom teachers are just as bad at it, but I think as principals too, we push stuff down so that we can bring the smile and bring the energy and bring the activity. But I want to talk about the positive note, and that is where is everything today? How does everything sit today?
Well, let me tell you something. God is good, because I've got a kid now. He plays in the church band on the youth side, and he is a drummer. He's always been a drummer. So he's a drummer in the church band. He has his own online business right now of selling cards. He used to be a huge Yu-Gi-Oh player. That was one of the that he got into. That was part of his therapy. Find something, and so he stayed in it. I would take him to tournaments. He actually made it and received an invite to nationals, like the big dog. And then he said, "I'm good. I don't want to play anymore." What? I couldn't believe it. So he put the cards aside, and so he has an online business. He had a fantastic web show for a while, teaching people how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Um, and he taught himself how to edit using his cell phone. Just the mad skills this kid has.
Yeah.
But he actually, he's going to graduate early. He's going to be a senior, and he's getting out of school in December. He got accepted to a school in Dallas, and he's going to start college in January.
Wow.
So we've gone from a kid that we didn't like, in the behaviors, to a kid that just loves life. He's been an Avid. Avid really helped a lot. I mean, his Avid teacher, he had Coach, I cannot remember, Scoop. He had Reed. He had coach for a while, and now he has another Avid teacher who's amazing. That was great for him to see worth. So between all that stuff and people loving on him, even my two friends in the district that would check on me, they checked on him because they loved on him, and they were amazing. And so this is a kid now, like I said, who lays across the bed and talks with me, talks my ear off. And I accept that. I like that so much better. We're not afraid of each other. We talk to each other. We hug each other, love on each other. He sits right there in church, and he's listening. He's soaking it all in, and has a great head on his shoulders. And he would, like I said, he would be one that would tell you, you have to find worth in yourself. That's the only way. And allowing God to change it within him. There was nothing we could do for him. And all we could do is just be there for him when he's ready to come back. Right. And that's the hardest thing, to be patient and wait on your child to come back to you. And that's what we did.
Yeah, because there's no set timetable.
No set timetable. We were willing to wait out his behavior, for him to come back. And it was almost kind of like, if you can imagine watching a movie and you hit pause and then you go back and push play and the movie continues. That's what happened for us. We pushed pause during all that stuff that was going on, and then we pushed play, and our life continued, with our son. And that's just what it is. And so, that anniversary rolls around every year. It's kind of weird. The beginning of the school year is always tough for him, because it kind of brings back some stuff. And so we're ready. We know what to expect, and we see the signs right away, and we take care of that. And he still has the same routines. He still sends me a text if he's feeling anything, still talks to me if he's feeling anything. And that's pretty much it. So he's not doing it, but we still have to keep boundaries in place as if he is going to, because life is not fair. Life is hard, and we're not always going to be around him. That first day that my husband and I went out on a date after, some of the stuff was going on, that was scary. We went to the movies to see this. I'll never let him pick out another movie again. But we watched this movie, and in the movie, there was a scene where the lady was cutting herself. That was the first time that I realized what he was doing. And it had been months, between the time we found out, which was November, up through like March, April. So this has been a long span of time. But it took me in that moment in the theater to watch that screen, and I covered my face, and then I put my hand down and I started crying in the theater. And I said, that's what he was doing? It did not register until that moment. And I can't even tell you the rest of that movie, because we wanted to get back home, because that was the first time he had been at home by himself, after all that. And but that gave it full circle for me. I said, oh my gosh, that's, whatever we need to do to rescue him. And really what we needed to do was put boundaries in place and love on him, and make sure he knew that we're there when he comes back. But the behaviors could not stay.
And I think that, what I love about this story, and the reason I'm so glad that you were brave enough to share it, and that your son was brave enough to allow you to share the story as well, is that, it's not a perfect story, and but it ended up in so many great things coming out of that pain and that turmoil and that confusion. And I know that, You know, when you shared the story with me a couple months ago, and then hearing it again now, I mean, it's just it moves me and it impacts me. Just the power that lies in laying yourself bare and
Mhm.
letting people see that life isn't always pretty.
Right.
But like you said, I know you and I are both people of faith, and so both of us, you know, we say, you know, but we've got somebody we can lean on. We have somebody
Right.
we turn to, and that we go to, that we pray, and that we we believe the best of what's supposed to happen is going to happen for us. And
Right.
I want to say thank you
I don't
so
know if
much.
I'm crying this time, but oh my gosh.
Well, I want to say, you know, there's been several times where I'm like, okay, I see, what you can't see is I can control the camera. So there's been several times where I like put it on you because I'm like, okay, I'm starting to tear up now, because it's making me emotional. But you know, I want to tell you thank you so much. And you haven't even I've been able to see some of the comments people have been leaving as well, just about how the story's speaking to them, and I know that God is going to use this story in mighty ways, not only to save lives, but potentially bring families together and all kinds of things. And so, being brave is not easy.
No.
Being brave is terrifying. And so, I just personally, from the bottom of my heart, want to say thank you. And thank you to your son and your husband and your family for allowing us to glimpse inside and learn and grow alongside of you.
You're welcome. You know, for me, the ultimate goal is to make sure that everybody understands that for us, we had a positive ending. You know, he's still here.
Right.
And don't sweat the small stuff. And like I said in the beginning, God's amazing and he spared our kid. And so what I have to do moving forward is make sure that every day that I'm left here is for the purpose of doing his good. And that is making sure that every kid I can love on, I'm going to do that. Every teacher I can love on, I'm going to do that. And make sure that no one ever feels like that they're not worthy, you know, because we are, and he is, and I'm telling you, that kid, he just changed my life. And like I said, the things he does right now just drives me up the wall, and I love it. He doesn't take the trash out like he's supposed to, and like, take the trash out. He's like, I will. But he's just it's one of those situations where I honestly, I said to myself, that'll never happen to me. I don't ever have to worry about that. And then I woke up one morning and my whole life just completely turned around. And it was hard, but like I said, it's still day by day. We're not 100% over it.
That's right.
But we are so mindful and so conscious of what's going on, but we know who the person is that has us, and it's God himself. And that's just it. That's just what it is. So now you made me cry.
I know. Me too. Well, Jofee, thank you so much again. I appreciate you and adore you so much. And
you too.
Our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Tell Your Story. I hope this, along with all the episodes, inspire you to be brave enough to get out there and share your story, whether that is through writing it, telling other people, just being brave enough to know that you matter, your story matters, and we need to be telling them, because every story can impact someone in some way. Everybody have a great evening, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.